He woke before the sun, not because of fear, because that was the habit. The house was quiet, too quiet for a weekday. His wife was already up. She didn't speak. She just handed him the coffee. The children were still asleep, their shoes lying neatly by the door. Outside, the street looked normal. No smoke, no shouting, no crowds yet. He buttoned his coat slowly. The same coat he wore every morning. The bank was only 3 blocks away. He'd walked that path for years. He locked the door behind him, out of routine, out of trust. Other men were already on the sidewalk, not talking, just standing. Someone coughed, someone checked a pocket watch. The bank building came into view, brick, solid, familiar. The doors were closed. That wasn't strange, not yet. Banks open late sometimes. Everyone knew that. He took his place at the end of the line. Then another man joined, then another. No one complained, no one joked. Minutes passed. The clock above the door didn't move. It never had. A woman crossed the street and stopped. She stared at the windows. The curtains were drawn. That was new. Someone stepped closer to the door, pressed an ear against the glass. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Someone knocked. Once, the sound echoed too loudly. Still, nothing. A folded paper was taped to the inside of the door. Small, carefully placed, no one could read it from where they stood. He stepped forward, slowly. The paper wasn't an announcement. It wasn't a warning. It was just a sentence. Temporary closure. Please return later. Later meant tomorrow, or the next day. That's what everyone told themselves. A man laughed softly, too softly. Another man shook his head, as if correcting a thought. Someone said, "They'll open after noon." Someone else said nothing. He thought of the money inside, not in numbers, in purpose. Rent, coal, shoes for winter. Savings didn't feel like savings. They felt like time. He looked back toward his street, toward his house. It was still standing, still warm, for now. The line didn't move, but it didn't break either. No one left, because leaving felt like deciding, and no one was ready for that. The sun climbed higher. The door stayed shut. That was the moment. Though no one said it aloud, that was when something ended. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, behind locked glass. And the town didn't know yet that this morning would be the last normal one for a very long time. The bank had always been there, before the children were born, before the paint peeled. Its bricks didn't change. Its windows didn't age. Men said it felt like a courthouse or a church, something official, something permanent. You didn't question it. You used it. Every payday the line was orderly. Quiet voices, clean ledgers. The teller knew names, knew faces. He asked about the harvest, about a sick wife. Money wasn't discussed loudly. It didn't need to be. The vault door was thick, heavy. It closed with a sound that felt final, reassuring. People liked that sound. They said it meant safety. Savings were spoken of like shelter, like walls, like roofs. If you had money inside, you were protected. That's what fathers told sons. That's what neighbors told neighbors. Rent was paid on time. Mortgages were signed carefully. The papers were long. The language was small, but the signature felt strong. Ownership felt earned. A house meant arrival. It meant you'd made it. Not rich, just secure. Children slept better in owned houses. That's what people believed. Winters felt shorter. When wages came late, there was the bank. When sickness came, there was the bank. It wasn't generosity, it was confidence. Credit was offered quietly, politely, no pressure, just assurance. You'll be fine. People liked hearing that. The bank manager wore good shoes. He lived on the same street. He waved, he nodded. That mattered. Trust didn't feel risky. It felt normal. No one imagined absence. No one imagined locked doors. Because nothing had ever happened before. Small towns don't rehearse disaster, they rehearse routine. Morning bells, afternoon meals, Saturday errands. The bank fit into that rhythm. It didn't disrupt it. So when the door stayed closed, people didn't panic. They waited. Waiting felt reasonable. Waiting felt loyal. After all, you don't abandon something that's never abandoned you. Not on the first morning. Not without proof. And there was no proof yet. Just a paper. Just a sentence. Temporary closure. Temporary things end. That was the belief. That was the mistake. But mistakes don't announce themselves. They sit quietly, like money behind a locked door, like trust with nowhere to go. And the town kept breathing, unaware that stability had already started to move out from under their feet. Waiting stretched into hours, then into the next morning. The paper was still there. Someone had straightened it, as if that helped. The line returned, shorter now. People whispered, not panic, calculation. If the bank opened tomorrow, everything would be fine. If it didn't, they would adjust. Adjustments felt manageable. Bills could wait a few days. Shopkeepers were patient. At first, they knew the families. They knew the habits. Credit was extended. Quietly. Pay me when it opens. That sounded reasonable. The problem wasn't today. The problem was written earlier. In ink no one read twice. Loans had clauses, small ones, interest that shifted, deadlines that tightened. They weren't traps by design. They were protections. For the bank, mortgages assumed access to cash, to savings, to movement. Without access, the math changed. Late payments became penalties. Penalties became notices, not yet delivered, just prepared. The bank's absence didn't stop time. Rent still came due. Coal still cost money. Children still grew. But money stopped moving. It sat behind walls, invisible. The town felt heavier. People walked slower. Conversations shortened. The bank manager didn't wave anymore. His curtains were drawn now, too. That felt strange. Someone said he'd gone to the city. Someone said he was sick. No one knew. Knowing required answers, and answers required doors. The store ledger grew thicker. Names stacked up. Promises replaced payments. Promises don't spend, they linger. A farmer delayed buying seed. A carpenter delayed repairs. Delays echoed. What one man paused, another felt. Work slowed, not stopped, just thinned. That was the danger, not collapse. Erosion. Each day shaved something small. Confidence, patience, certainty. People began counting differently. Not money, days. How many days until trouble became real? At night, lamps stayed unlit. Oil was saved. Silence grew familiar. No alarms rang. No warnings came. Just routine with less margin. That's how traps work. They don't snap. They narrow. And by the time you notice the walls, you've already stepped inside. The bank still hadn't opened, and the town was still pretending that waiting was the same thing as safety. The sound came before the sight. Hooves on stone, slow, deliberate. A wagon stopped near the bank. 2 men stepped down. They weren't from the town. Their coats were darker, their hats newer. They didn't look around much. They walked straight to the door. The paper was gone. Someone had removed it early. One of the men carried a key. Not the bank's key, a county key. Metal scraped metal. The door opened just enough, not wide, not welcoming. The men went inside. They closed it behind them. The sound was final. People gathered again. Faster this time. No line. Just bodies. Someone asked a question. No one answered. Minutes passed. Then one man returned. He held a document. Thicker than the paper before. Stamped. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The bank was under control now. Operations suspended. Accounts frozen. Withdrawals prohibited. Temporary. That word again. Temporary didn't comfort anyone anymore. Someone shouted. Just one word. Mine. Another man asked about payroll. Another asked about savings. A woman asked about a wedding fund. The man read from the page, monotone, as if emotion could be argued away. No funds would be released, no exceptions, not today, not tomorrow. Someone pushed forward. He was held back. Not roughly, firmly. That felt worse. Authority without anger. The doors closed again, this time with intent. Someone knocked. Hard. No echo now, just wood. Someone cried. Quietly. Someone left. Then another. Leaving didn't feel like deciding anymore. It felt like survival. By noon, the street was empty. The bank stood alone, open, but unreachable. That afternoon, notices were written, not delivered, prepared, rent reminders, loan terms reviewed, deadlines recalculated. The system woke up, slowly, efficiently. That evening, families ate less, not from fear, from instinct. The future had shrunk. No one knew how much, but everyone felt it. The bank had not failed loudly. It had been taken, and with it, the town's breathing room. That morning marked the change, not because money vanished, but because access did. And without access, ownership was just a memory waiting to be corrected. The notices didn't arrive all at once. That would have felt like disaster. They came one by one, quietly, folded carefully, addressed correctly. The first was polite, a reminder. The second was firmer, a recalculation. Interest adjusted, grace shortened. Still legal, still calm. The bank wasn't asking yet. The system was. Men opened envelopes at kitchen tables, women read them twice, then again aloud, as if the words might change. They didn't. Savings were still frozen. Credit was now cautious. Shopkeepers hesitated. They knew what was coming. But knowing didn't help. Coal was bought in smaller amounts. Bread too. Children noticed. They asked fewer questions. Adults spoke less at night. The sound of paper became heavy. Receipts, bills, notices. One man tried the city bank. He was told to wait. Another tried a lender. The terms were different now. Sharper. A farmer sold a tool. A carpenter sold a watch. Selling felt temporary. Until there was nothing left to sell. The bank building stayed guarded. Windows dark. People avoided the street. Looking felt like admitting. Court dates appeared on calendars, not circled, just written small, as if minimizing them might help. A family skipped Sunday service, then another. Absence spread faster than panic. No one wanted to be seen. Shame arrived before eviction. It always does. Newspapers printed lists, not names, addresses. People recognized them anyway. Did you hear? Yes. That was the whole conversation. One morning, a wagon returned, not to the bank, to a house. Furniture was moved, not stolen, reassigned. Neighbors watched from windows, not because they wanted to, because they couldn't look away. A child asked where the bed was going. No one answered. That night the house was emptier, but not empty yet. People told themselves stories, just a few weeks, just until access returned. But access never did. Only deadlines did. The cascade wasn't loud. It didn't rush. It repeated. Notice. Delay. Loss. Over and over. Until the town stopped counting money and started counting doors that were no longer theirs. The waiting changed shape. It became a routine. People woke up thinking about it, went to sleep measuring it. Morning meant checking doors. Afternoon meant asking questions. Evening meant deciding what could be sold next. Some walked to neighboring towns, other banks, other counters, different faces. The answers were careful, sympathetic, useless. We've heard. We're waiting too. Letters were written, folded neatly, addressed correctly. They traveled farther than money ever had. Most never returned. A few came back unopened, stamped, unclaimed. Rumors spread faster than facts. A partial release, a special exception. A date whispered at the feed store. Each rumor bought another day, another delay, another night without deciding. Animals were sold first because they ate. Tools followed because they could be replaced. Family objects went last because they couldn't. A wedding ring disappeared from a finger. No announcement, just absence. Men began walking longer routes, avoiding questions, avoiding looks. Children noticed the quiet. They learned not to ask. Schools still opened. Attendance thinned. Lunches changed. Smaller, simpler. No one complained. Complaints felt wasteful now. The bank remained occupied, guarded, alive, but unreachable. People stood outside anyway, as if proximity mattered, as if patience could be measured by distance. Hope didn't vanish. It narrowed. It became specific. Just one withdrawal. Just enough to reset things. Just enough to breathe. But breathing costs money. And money stayed still. Frozen doesn't mean gone. That's what people told themselves. Frozen means waiting. Waiting felt safer than accepting, because accepting required imagining an end, and no one was ready for that yet. So the town stayed suspended, not falling, not standing, just holding itself together with rumors and habits and the belief that something solid would move first. The ideas ran out before the days did. People started retracing steps. Who they knew, who they might know. Old favors were remembered, not asked for yet, just remembered. Someone rode 2 hours to see a cousin, came back with sympathy, and nothing else. Another waited outside an office all morning, watched clerks come and go. No one invited him in. The law was consulted, quietly, as if volume might make it worse. The answer was always the same. The bank was within its rights. Rights were not the same as relief. People began pawning futures. Labor promised months ahead. Harvest spoken for early. Work done before it was needed. Paid less. Accepted anyway. Some families combined households. What began as help became necessity. Rooms were shared. Beds were rotated. Privacy was traded for warmth. People started keeping ledgers again. Not of money, of patience. How many days left? How many favors unused? How many things still unsold? A man sold his father's tools, the ones he'd inherited. He didn't tell anyone. They simply disappeared. A woman unstitched curtains, turned them into clothes. No one commented. Commenting felt cruel. People waited for announcements. From the bank. From the county. From anywhere official. Nothing came. Silence became information. It told them what not to expect. Evenings grew longer. Not by the clock, by the thoughts that filled them. Children learned new rules. Don't break things, don't ask for more, don't expect replacements. Promises stopped being made. They required optimism. Optimism felt irresponsible now. Some families began packing early, not because they were told to, because they could see the line forming. Others waited too long, because hope is lighter than fear and easier to carry. The town reached the edge without realizing it. Everything that could be tried had been tried. Everything that could be delayed had been delayed. What remained was not a decision. It was an arrival. And once it arrived, there would be no more room to wait. The papers changed tone, not words, finality. Dates were no longer suggestions. They were instructions. Appear, vacate, surrender. No one argued the language anymore. Arguing required leverage. Leverage required money. Money was still unreachable. Courtrooms filled quietly, not with protest, with hats held low. Men stood when told, sat when told, answered when asked. Yes, no. Judgments were brief. The law had no patience for absence, or frozen vaults. Ownership dissolved on paper first. That hurt less. At first, sheriff notices followed, nailed straight, centered on doors, visible to everyone. That was the point. A family packed what fit, what didn't stayed, or was taken, or was left behind. No one could tell the difference anymore. Houses emptied slowly, room by room, sound by sound. A chair scraped, a drawer slammed. Then silence. Some families left town entirely. No farewells, no forwarding address, just absence. Others stayed, in smaller rooms, with relatives, with strangers. Crowding replaced ownership, privacy disappeared, identity followed. A man without a house was not the same man. He knew it. Everyone did. Work was harder to find. Employers noticed addresses, or the lack of them. Children changed schools, then stopped attending. Shoes wore out faster. Pride wore out first. The bank still stood, occupied now, but unchanged. Its bricks didn't remember. People did. The street around it emptied. Grass grew where feet had been. The town shrank without ceremony, no announcement, no marker, just fewer lights at night. The point of no return wasn't a single eviction. It was the realization that nothing was coming back. Not the money, not the houses, not the life that had fit inside them. And once that realization settled, people stopped waiting. They started leaving, or enduring. Both felt the same. The loss was complete, even if the town was still on the map. The change wasn't announced, it was noticed. A missing face, an empty desk, a door that stayed shut too long. Children stopped bringing friends home. There was no room to explain. Teachers asked fewer questions. They already knew the answers. Men avoided the center of town, not from shame alone, from recognition. Being seen meant being measured. Church attendance shifted. Front pews emptied first. Then the back. Faith didn't leave. Visibility did. Some families stopped attending entirely, not from disbelief, from fatigue. Community required energy. Energy had become expensive. Names were spoken carefully now, not in gossip, in caution. Have you seen? No. That was enough. Work offers dried up, not intentionally, just quietly. Risk had entered every decision. Employers needed certainty. Certainty was scarce. Children were moved between houses, relatives, friends, temporary arrangements that stayed. Privacy disappeared. Crowding replaced space. Arguments followed. Then apologies. Then silence. People learned new rules. Don't ask too much. Don't stay too long. Don't mention the bank. The town had not fractured. It had thinned internally, like wood under pressure. Still standing, but changed. Every conversation carried weight. Every invitation felt conditional. The loss was no longer financial. It was social, reputational, existential. People stopped thinking in years. They thought in weeks, then days. The idea of return faded, not officially, emotionally. This was the breaking point. Not the eviction, not the notice. The moment when people understood that even if money came back, the town they knew would not. And once that understanding settled, everything that followed felt less shocking. Just heavier, just slower, just final. The town did not disappear. Mornings were quieter, fewer footsteps, fewer doors opening. Some never opened again. Windows stayed dusty. Signs faded without being removed. They avoided old streets. Too many memories. Too many empty houses. Permanent ones. Asking hurt. Children played closer to home. Not because of rules. About crops. Never about the bank. A man who stayed too long at the corner was assumed to be struggling. People looked away. Anonymous. Work offered without questions. Different hours, different faces, different rules. People went in only when necessary. No one lingered. No one chatted. Once broken, it remembers. Property changed hands, not from the town. Houses became numbers, or labor. The town learned to live smaller. Every empty house was remembered full. Every closed door had a voice attached. Loss did not fade. It settled, like dust, and those who remained understood something quietly. The collapse had not been an event. It had been a process, one that rewarded patience until patience ran out. The town survived, but survival was not recovery. It was simply what happened after everything else was gone. Years passed without ceremony. The town aged. New families arrived. They asked fewer questions. They rented. They worked. They didn't ask who owned the houses before. Records existed, but records are quiet. Memory lived elsewhere. In pauses, in streets that curved strangely, in empty lots with no explanation. Children grew up hearing fragments, not stories. Fragments. A long time ago, before things changed, the bank became ordinary again. That was the most unsettling part. It functioned, it lent, it collected. People used it carefully, not lovingly. The sound of the vault door was just a sound now, no meaning attached. Trust had been replaced by habit, ownership returned, but differently. Shorter terms, higher caution, more signatures. Homes felt conditional, as if borrowed from time. Men kept savings spread. A little here, a little somewhere else, just in case. No one said why. They didn't need to. Lost trains quietly. The town looked stable again. From the outside, painted houses, clean windows, but stability had changed shape. It no longer promised permanence. It promised delay. People learned to live with that. They married anyway. They had children anyway. Life did not stop. It adjusted. What had happened was not taught in schools. It didn't fit neatly. No heroes, no villains, just consequences. But the pattern repeated elsewhere. Other towns, other banks, other mornings, always beginning the same way, with trust, with routine, with doors that had never been locked before. Those who remembered felt something when headlines appeared. Bank troubles, credit tightening, temporary measures. The language felt familiar, too familiar. They didn't panic. They watched, they waited. Waiting had history. The town had learned that collapse does not arrive shouting. It arrives politely, stamped, folded, explained. And by the time it is understood, it has already passed through every room where people once believed they were safe. No marker was ever placed, no plaque, no ceremony. The houses that were lost were lived in again, just by different people. The names on the doors changed, then changed again. Eventually, no one remembered the first ones. The bank kept operating. It balanced its books. It survived. Institutions often do. The people adjusted. Those who left were spoken of less each year. Absence became normal. Children who had once slept in those houses grew up elsewhere. They carried fragments, a street name, a sound, a feeling when money was mentioned. Nothing concrete, just caution. The town looked healthy to visitors, stable, orderly, affordable. That word came later. Affordable. It did not mean safe, it meant changed. The morning the bank never opened was not remembered as a disaster. It was remembered as a shift. As the moment things became harder without explanation, people stopped expecting permanence. stopped assuming protection, stopped believing that ownership meant immunity. They learned that systems do not fail all at once. They pause, they adjust, they protect themselves, and people are asked to wait. Waiting feels harmless until it isn't. The houses were gone, the savings were gone, the routines were gone, but the town remained, smaller, quieter, wiser in ways that are never taught. America moved forward, it always does, quietly, without looking back at the doors that stayed closed or the lives that unraveled in the space between trust and access. The story did not end. It settled into records, into habits, into the way people hesitate before believing that something solid will always be there tomorrow morning. The bank opened again, eventually, but for those who remembered, it never truly reopened.